Harav YCD, welcome back to Yerushalmi Maaser Sheni. Now we have spoken about Maaser Sheni, which was Tameh in Yerushalmi. You can redeem it. We're bringing now an argument about food that you bought with money where you had redeemed Maaser Sheni onto the money. Now this food, whether it was bought in Yerushalmi or it was bought outside Yerushalmi wrongly, you're not allowed to redeem it. You have to eat in Yerushalmi. Now, what happens if it becomes tummy? So, halakuach bekesef maaser, you bought food with money of Maaser Sheni and shenitma, and it's become tummy. Yipada, you can redeem it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer yikaver. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you cannot redeem it. You can't eat it. It has to be buried. Amru lo Rabbi Yehuda. They said to Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'im. I'll wait for you. Right? There's noise upstairs we're listening to. My Maaser Sheni Atzmai Shenitma. Now Maaser Sheni itself becomes Tamei Harei Nifter. That can be redeemed. So something which is bought, Halakuach Bekesef Maaser Shenitma, something bought with Maaser Sheni which is Tamei, where it's more lenient than Maaser itself. The Kedusha is coming Mikoyach, the Kedusha of Maaser. So how much more so? Ena did she put how much more so you should be able to redeem it. Amar lahen, Rabbi Yehuda answered back, like, you cannot learn one from the other. Because if Maaser Sheni Atzmai, Maaser Sheni itself can be redeemed, because there's another leniency. Shekenu Nifter, it can also be redeemed for Tahar when it's not Tameh, or Berichot Mokum when it's far away. You can redeem it even though it's Tahar and it's far away, before it's even come into Yerushalayim. Therefore, we're lenient that if it's Tameh, you can redeem it even if it comes into Yerushalayim. So that's all very well. It's saying Maaser Sheni has got leniencies. You can redeem it outside when you bring it in. Fair enough, it's Tahar. However, Taibru b'lakuach b'kesef maaser. But when you bought something with Maaser Sheni money, which has got another chumrah, she'eina nifter b'tahar, that can't be redeemed if it's tahar, or if it's far away. It can't be redeemed even outside Yerushalayim. And maybe the Torah is machmir that if it becomes tameh, you cannot redeem it. So that's the argument with Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. So who said what? Rabbi Yehuda said it's going to be buried, food that becomes tameh, which was bought with Maaser Sheni money, and the Chachamim say it can be redeemed. Now, we bring an argument about the pidyon required for Maaser Sheni. Let's see something else. Tzvi shalakchai bekesef maaser. You have Maaser Sheni money, and you bought a deer to eat it as the din of Maaser Sheni. Like kesef maaser, you could buy all sorts of food. Now the deer dies. Oh dear. Or mace, the deer dies, you can't eat it. Yikaver aliyat oiroi. Now, although you can't eat it, it can't be redeemed, not the flesh and not the skin. So even on the skin, there's Kedushas Maaser Sheni. So it has to be buried together with its skin. Rav Shimon argues, he says, Yipadeh, it can be redeemed, and we'll see the reason in the Gemara. Now, another din. Lak chai chai ushchatai. So let's say you bought an animal, and then you shechted it, but nitma, and the flesh became tameh. Let's say a sheretz touched it, so now you can't eat it because of tumah. Yipada, it can be redeemed like anything which was bought with Maaser Sheni, which was tameh. They could be podo, it couldn't be redeemed according to the Chachamim at least. Basically, the animal's been slaughtered; it was fitting to eat, so it's like any other food which was bought with kesef maaser. If it's tameh, it can be redeemed according to the Chachamim. Rabbi Yossi argues, and he says no, you cover. It has to be buried. When you bought it, the animal was alive. Now, had it died straight away, you couldn't redeem it. Now, it's been slaughtered, and then it's become tameh. So it's like a tzvi, it's like a living deer that you bought and died. You can't redeem it, right? That's according to the Chachamim who argue on Rav Shimon above. So he's saying no, it has to be buried. When you bought it was living, and you couldn't redeem it then, and so now it's slaughtered, you still can't redeem it. A third case, you bought the deer with Maaser Sheni money shachot when it's already slaughtered. Benitzma, and it became tamei. Harehu like a peiros. It's like fruit bought with Maaser Sheni money. If it's tamei, it can be redeemed even according to Rabbi Yossi, because at the time when you first bought it, it was already slaughtered. Right? You bought it when it's already slaughtered. Okay. Now we come to another discussion. And this is jugs full of wine of Maaser Sheni. Is there Kedushas Maaser on the jug as well? So Hamashil Kankanin Le Maaser Sheni. So you are lending out jugs for Maaser Sheni. So you basically took them from your home. You're lending them out to put in Maaser Sheni wine. Alpha Pisha Goffon. Now, although you closed them up with the stopper after they were full, you cemented down the stopper on the top of the jug. Like Hanamasa, the jugs themselves do not get Kedushas Maaser Sheni. Okay? You're just using the jugs for storage, whatever it is, and you've put a seal on them. The jugs do not have Kedushas Maaser Sheni. Now, however, Zaraf L'Toichan Stam, if you poured normal wine, Tevel wine, into the jug, and then after that you give it a name of Maaser Sheni, you designate it as Maaser Sheni for some other produce. If you do this, Ad Shalai Gafam, before you put a stopper on, like Hanamasa, then the jugs don't have that Kedushas Maaser Sheni. At the time when you give it a name, they were open. Jugs which are open are not secondary to the wine. However, Misha Goffam, if you have already put a stopper on, and then you give it a name Maaser Sheni to a closed jug, Kana Maaser. The jugs become Kodesh with Kedushas Maaser. Because they are closed, they are secondary to the wine, and the Kedushas Maaser goes on the wine, and it also goes on them. So when you made your pronunciation and your designation, if they were open, the jug does not get Kedushas Maaser Sheni. But if they were closed, then it does. Now the Mishnah brings another din in a mixture of Truma and Chulin, but there's a difference between putting a seal on, not putting a seal. So you've got jugs of Truma wine, which are mixed with jugs of Chulin wine. Now if they get mixed up when they're all open bottles, Ad Shalai Gafon, then they're all bottle. It's like any tarubas is bottle in chulin. Truma is bottle in 100 of chulin. So if you have 100 times the truma is bottle in 100. However, if they get mixed up once they've been closed, mishagofan, then mekatres koshen, then the whole mixture becomes forbidden. Closed jugs, sealed closed jugs, are a davar choshuv, something significant. A davar choshuv does not become batel, right? If it's significant because and there's an isur attached to it, then it does not become batel. So therefore, your wine is not going to be bottled in 100 bottles of chulin. All of them we have to treat them all as truma. Okay, it says davar choshuv, by the way, is not bottled even in 1,000. Closed barrels are one of the things mentioned in that list. It's a davar shebaminion. It's always sold by number. It's never sold by weight. Now these were big barrels, but not small vessels. You have to say these jugs here are a bit bigger, and they've got a din like barrels. That's what you'll have to say. Okay. Now another halacha in the third topic. Now again, there's a difference between jugs which have been sealed and jugs not sealed. So you got tevel wine, and you want to take truma, one for the others. So if you want to do it ad shalai gafon, before you have closed them off, terem me'achas al hakol, you can take truma one for the lot. So there are all these open jugs here, and one tevel, I take truma for all the rest. That's fine, because they're open. They're considered minamukov. They're considered close to you, and you want to take from this one for the rest. Absolutely fine. However, Misha Goffan, once you want to take truma after they've been closed up, then Torah mikol achas v'achas, you have to take truma separately from each jug. If you take one for the rest, it's not considered menamukov, it's not considered next to you. They're all separate entities, and you can't take truma one for the others. You have to take truma out of each jug. You have to separate a bit. Okay. Now, min hamukaf doesn't mean they're actually touching one another. No, they're scattered, but if they're in one place, if they're open, they're considered mukafim. You can take truma one for the lot. But when they're closed, they're considered completely separate. Beis Shammai say, if you want to take truma with these jugs, once you've sealed them, but you still want to take one for the lot, so what's the solution? The only solution is to open all the jugs, pour them back in the vat, and then you're taking truma one bit for the lot. Beis Hillel say, you open the jugs, no, you don't have to pour it back in the vat. Now, as long as they're open, that's considered next to you. So as long as you take all the tops off, that's good enough. Now, the main din of Maaser Sheni with the jugs, that if you give a name of Maaser Sheni once it's been sealed, then it acquires Maaser Sheni Kedusha on the jug as well. But when do we say that if you gave the wine the name of Maaser Sheni once it's been sealed, that Maaser Sheni goes on the jug? But where they are normally sold closed. Therefore, the wine, the jug is secondary to the wine, and it takes Maaser status. However, in a place where they are sold open, so people check the wine, what the quality of the wine is, they open them before they buy it. Then the correct girsa should be Yatzar Kankan L'Chulin. Then Maaser does not acquire the jug, because this is the way and the manner to open them. They're not secondary to the wine, and there's no Kedushas Maaser on it. Okay? So if people always open it, then it's not considered closed, and it's considered open, and then what? Then the jug is not considered to have Kedushas Maaser Sheni. Yeah?
And you can take from one for all of them.
Yeah, then you can take one for the lot, yeah. Now, before we said you have to actually take the lids. So what are we saying now? If they sell them open, it's chulin. So it's so the other din is chulin, but maybe they're all considered one.
Because
that was a separate din, yeah.
We're saying in a place where they're sold open and they're considered open.
Yeah. All right, let's carry on. Some, by the way, have this girsa as we said, yatzar kankan l'chulin. According to one girsa, it's lo yatzar kankan l'chulin. And now, according to this girsa, Maaser, it still means that Maaser did not acquire it. But lo yatzar l'chulin means there's no need to make it go to chulin through a redemption, because it never had Kedushas Maaser at all, and that's this other pshat. So the idea is the same, but it's whether you put in a lo or you don't put in a lo. Now the Mishnah comes to another din with these jugs. You buy chulin wine with Maaser Sheni money in Yerushalmi, which we said, if the jugs are closed, there's no Kedushas Maaser, only on the wine. Did we say that? You're buying chulin wine. We said, let's just find it again. If the jug is closed, where did we say it? Zayin with Aleph, yeah. Alright, it's much earlier on in the Masechet. Okay. We said, if the jugs were closed, there's no Kedushas Maaser, only on the wine. The jugs are chulin. If the jugs were open, they're not secondary to the wine, and therefore you've paid some of the money for the jug as well, and it's got Kedushas Maaser, and it does not go to chulin. So this is another din. You're buying chulin wine, right? This is not connected with Maaser Sheni. So you're buying chulin wine with Maaser Sheni money. So on Dav Zayin, if they're closed, there's no Kedushas Maaser only on the wine, but not on the jug. If they're open, then they're separate, and therefore you gave money for the jug as well. There's Kedushas Maaser on the jug. Okay. Now, in Raza, if the one who's selling an open jug wants lahachmi al atzmai, to be strict on himself, limka b'midah, to give based on measure, the money that the purchaser is giving him will only be for the exact wine which is measured out, and the jug will be free, then yatzar kankan l'chulin, then the jug goes to chulin. There's not got Kedushas Maaser, because the money is given for the wine alone, and it's all mechulal on that, and it just goes on the wine and not on the jug. Rav Shimon said, you want to buy a barrel of wine of chulin with Maaser Sheni money, and you say, I'm selling you all the wine in the barrel, apart from the wine, let's say a kankan, a jug's worth. That I'm leaving myself to take from the barrel. I'm leaving behind a jug's worth for myself. Yasa kankan lechulin. So the barrel goes to chulin. It does not have a keli. The keli doesn't have Kedushas Maaser Sheni. There's no Kedushas Maaser Sheni on all the wine in the barrel. Some of it remains chulin wine. So we don't say the keli becomes holy because of the wine, unless all the wine is holy. But since you're maintaining some of the wine for yourself, then the barrel does definitely not get any kedusha at all. You follow? So if you're keeping some wine for yourself, it doesn't get. Okay, now we talk about the machlokes Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda in the first part of our Mishnah. So that was you bought something with Maaser Sheni and it became tamei. According to Chacham, you redeem it. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to be buried. What's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Ma'atav Rabbi Yehuda. He said the pasuk says you take the money kesef rishon v'lai kesef sheni. So that he says v'kesef ha-kesef v'lasata ha-kesef. This hay tells us that Pidyon Maaser Sheni is once. You're paid the fruit onto money. But fruit that you bought with money has no other redemption. Right? And although Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah didn't answer the Chachamim from this drasha, he just said a Kabbalah that they asked. He asked a question against their Kabbalah, but this was his true reason. And it's because of this drasha. Ha-kesem, first time round you can take the money and buy fruit. But once you bought fruit, you can't redeem it again. Alright? Ella, midman. Right. Ella, midman de'inun masivile b'kabachayma, hu masilam b'kabachayma. Because they asked him with a kabachayma, so he answered his bircha based on that. But his main reasoning was because kesef rishon like kesef sheni. The first time you use money to buy fruit, but not the second time. We learned in our Mishnah, tzvi shalach chayva kesef maaser. You buy a deer with Maaser Sheni and it dies, has to be buried with its skin, and Rishon said it can be redeemed. Why did the Tanna Kama say you can't redeem it? Tzvi. When you buy a tzvi with Maaser Sheni, also as a kikotche bedek habayis, they treated it like general donations to the base of Mikdash. Litan hamada baracha. Before you can redeem it, it has to stand up, so you can work out a valuation. Animals that you give for bedek habayis, for the treasury funds, once they're dead, you cannot redeem them. Because with Pidyon HaHekdesh it says, Kol Behema Tzmeah Shaliach Kvenim Kol Hashem Behemed Esa Behema Lifnei HaKohen, right? Is that this week's Sedra? Beherech HaKohen Esa Ben Tov Ben Ra. And an animal's not fitting for redemption unless you can fulfill this pasuk to stand it on its feet. Animal that dies, you can't stand it on its feet. Same thing with Maaser Sheni. Tanna Kama holds, the animal has to be able to stand up. So a dead deer, you cannot redeem it. Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Yikurim Zira, he asked, Behema Tamea, a non-kosher animal like a donkey or horse, do they need to be able to stand up? Is it only said with tahar animals, which are fitting for a korban, but they may have a blemish or something given to the bedek habayis? But maybe a non-kosher animal, which is not at all fitting, is only for treasury fund. Maybe it can be redeemed even dead. Maybe it doesn't need to stand up. Or maybe even a non-kosher animal needs to be able to stand up. And if it dies, it can't be redeemed. Oh, well, so Zira answered back, had Rabbi Yossi not said, Chaya Tahira, that a kosher non-domestic, so a deer or something, Ta'una Hamada Baracha, had he not told us it needs to stand up, we would have said, we would have said, so he told us about a Chaya Tahira, right, like a deer. Had he not told us that a deer requires to stand up, we would have thought, actually, what gears have we got here? Okay, had he not told us that a Chaya Tahira needs Hamada Baracha, we would have thought that maybe a non-kosher animal doesn't need it. It's not fitting at all for a korban. But since he said a deer needs Hamada Baracha, even though it's not fitting for a korban, so the same thing, an animal which is tamei needs Hamada Baracha, right? It needs to be able to stand up before you can work out a value. Okay? Now, Rav Hila brings a raya for this din, that a non-kosher animal needs Hamada Baracha, Amar Rav Hula Matani Ken. We learned in the Brisa. That if a person is magdish a tamei animal, it can be redeemed. Ma behema tamei miyuchedes. It's unique. Sheshava shas pidyon and shas hekdesha. The time when you make a hekdesh, the time you redeem it, it's not fitting for a carbon. It's a non-kosher animal, right? Behema tamei. So therefore, afani aves hamesa. I will include an animal that dies, and then the nevela was holy. Sheshava shas pidyon and shas hekdesha. In the beginning, you made it holy, it wasn't fitting for a carbon, but I include that works. That maybe it's fitting for a carbon. I'll include, one second, Arbes HaMesa, I'll include an animal that dies. Sheshava Shas Pidyon and Shas Hekdesha. The beginning of the Hekdesh, it wasn't fitting. Therefore, it's the same as the time of the Pidyon. I'll include that is real Pidyon. Or Moitzi, however, I will exclude from redemption as Sha'ama, an animal where a person said Hareza Hekdesh, he made a Hekdesh, then he died. Shalai Mesa, Shalai Shava Shas Pidyon and Shas Hekdesha. The time of redemption is not the same as when he made a Hekdesh. Time of Hekdesh, it was fitting from his Be'ach. Now it's dead, you want to redeem it, it's not fitting. So therefore you can't redeem it. It's not the same. And this Brisa tells you that everything depends on this. The Shas Hekdesh, when you make a Hekdesh, and the redemption has to be the same. So Behema Tamea, if it's not Shas Pidyon equal to Shas Hekdesha, the time of Hekdesh it was alive. You could stand it up. Now you want to redeem it, it's dead. You can't stand it up. So it's not included in the Pidyon. So we see that also Behema Tamea, we have the din of Hamad of Aracha, and that's like Reb Zeira. Okay, so that's what he wanted to say. So what we're adding? We're adding Mesa maybe, where Pidyon and Hekdesh is the same, but we will exclude a case where he died. He made a Hekdesh and then he died, and they're not the same. Now, we do see in a Brisa that if you're Magdish and Nevela of an animal, it's fitting for Pidyon, because in the beginning it was never going to stand up. Rabbi Yossi proves this from a Mishnah elsewhere. On Rabbi Yossi, Masnisa Amra came from the following Mishnah of Yerushalmi. That Chamor, you make a donkey, a female donkey holy, the Bereka, let's say for the treasury fund. Merlin Bar, there's Me'ilah if you use that animal, or Vachalava, if you benefited from the milk, you're Chayiv Asher Me'ilah, Tashlumi Me'ilah, Kerem L'Chaimesh, like Hamor B'Hekdesh, right? So you're doing Me'ilah by using this female donkey that was donated to the Bereka Bais. Now, Vachalav Lav Kamesei, now the milk, surely it's like Hekdesh, which has died. There's no Pidyon. You can't stand it up. So this milk, once it comes away from the donkey, it's come away, it can't stand up. So it shouldn't have a Pidyon. And we have a rule, Koshul Tal Pidyon. Well, when something needs redemption, you can be over Me'ilah. If there's no Pidyon, there's no Me'ilah. So if Hekdesh, if Hekdesh don't get anything out of it, you can't redeem it. So yet we're still saying, you're Chayiv Me'ilah on this milk. What do you see? If you're Magdish and Nevela, Behema Ru'uya, if it was fitting for redemption, even though you can't stand it up, but at the time of Hekdesh and Pidyon were the same, and here as well, this milk is equal, the time of Hekdesh and the time of Pidyon is Ru'uya, therefore for redemption, and therefore the Ismaila applies. You follow? So as far as this milk is concerned, we're saying the statuses are the same. The time when it became holy and the time of the redemption. Now,
because either way, you can milk the animal.
What?
Because either way, you could have milked the animal.
Yeah, you could have milked the animal. It was still around. The milk was around. What is he saying here? Your Magdish Neveda Behema is fitting the carbon, even though you can't stand it up. But it's the same. The time when you make it Hekdesh and the time of Pidyon are the same. Okay, let's see what he says. The Rambam, they bring down, the Babli argues in Gemara and holds, Kodshe Bereka Bais, which has not got Pidyon, still has Me'ilah. Might still be this Me'ilah, even though you haven't got any redemption. Alright, so the Gemara asks on the Raya of Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi brought us a proof from the case of a female donkey, there's Me'ilah on it and on its milk, and he wanted to say this Raya. So in Tiftarine, the Shem Hilchas Mesa, if you explain the Mishnah like you want to say, that halacha you can redeem an animal which is hukdash when it's dead, therefore you can redeem this milk because it was never going to stand up. Lo yachil, you can't say that. So it's an inon, and we said you're making hekdesh the donkey, but there's me'ilah on the donkey and its milk. There's mashma here, you're not being makdish the donkey which has milk at the time, right, which is like being makdish a dead animal, because at the beginning of the hekdesh, the milk wasn't really separate, it couldn't be stood up. He says, what's it talking about? You only makdish the donkey. It's talking about a case where you only makdish the donkey. It's not you're being makdish the donkey and its milk. You're being makdish the donkey. And the Mishnah is telling you there's me'ilah on the milk which is formed later on, which wasn't there at the time. You follow? You're being makdish the donkey and the milk comes later. And that milk, how can you redeem it? It could never stand up. But the tchilas hekdesh was on the donkey which could stand up. So the time of hekdesh is not the same as the time of pidyon, because you're being makdish the donkey and the milk is not around yet. So it's not really the same. Right? The milk could never stand up. The tchilas hekdesh, it was with the donkey which could stand up. So the hekdesh and the pidyon are not the same. So, Amram Chanina, Kumi Ramana, Tifta, we can explain the Mishnah of Shimon. So Shimon Amar, he says, look, Kachi Berek Habayis, if he's only going to the treasury fund, there's no din it has to stand up. There's no din of Hamad Baracha, only with the Bizbeach things. But if you give a donkey with the treasury funds, it doesn't need standing up. And therefore the challah, the milk, could be redeemed. Therefore there is some minas there. Amalei, Rabbana said Rav Chanina, in Rav Shimon, you want to tell me the Mishnah holds like Rav Shimon, that treasury fund doesn't need to stand up? Then why mention a donkey? Any animal you make holy to a treasury fund, a tire animal with a blemish, the din will be the same. There'll be meat on the milk, because it's got redemption. Why does the Mishnah mention a donkey? It must be the Mishnah is like the Chachamim, therefore it mentioned a donkey. A chamoy, which is behemoth tmeah, there's me'ilah with the milk, because behemoth tmeah can't stand up. But not when we said before that behemoth tmeah needs to stand up. It must be that behemoth tmeah doesn't need to stand up. And that's why there is some me'ilah on the milk. Very good question. I'm afraid the Gemara does not answer it. He says, based on this, there's a steer between the Bryce and the Mishnah. If a Tomei animal needs to stand up to get a valuation or not. Some say even the Bryce it doesn't need. Some learn the other way around. Even the Mishnah is like the view that it does need. So there you are. You've got Mishnah, Bryce, whether they say each one is the host of Zira. Does it mean that it needs Hamad Baracha or it doesn't need it? The Rambam Paskins like the Chachamim, that donations to the Berek Habayis need to stand up to have a valuation, and this also applies to a non-kosher animal. If you're makdish it Berek Habayis, it needs to stand up, and if it's dead, you cannot redeem it. Nevertheless, he paskins that if you're makdish a donkey, there is me'ilah with the milk. Now, based on this, the question comes back: how is there me'ilah with the milk? It can't stand up. So, someone will say, right here, explain the Mishnah with makdish a chamoya to Berek Habayis. But the Lashon of Rambam in Hilchos Me'ilah, he's talking about your makdish a chamoya lemizbeach. You hear that? It's like for money to be used on a carbon on the mizbeach, and with that, it definitely doesn't need standing up, as the Rambam paskant. Okay. Some say Asuk Yehoz, there's no me'ilah with something which has redemption. The Rambam paskans there is me'ilah even with something which has no redemption. He holds the Babli argues on the Yerushalmi, and therefore there is me'ilah with the milk, even though there's no redemption. So it could be the Yerushalmi and the Babli are totally different things. Okay. So one who lends there's jugs for Maaser Sheni, even though you didn't put a stopper on, there's no Maaser. If you just pour them before you stop them, then there's no Maaser. Once you stop them, there's kind of Maaser. So we don't see the reason calling a name after you put a stopper on. Amar Zira. Amar Torah. The Torah says about Maaser Sheni. Paroteo b'mikdash v'kansel b'gvulin. If you got Maaser Sheni, then take it to a holy place in Yerushalmi and buy food. But if you've got parents of Maaser Sheni elsewhere, bring them into Yerushalmi to eat it there in Yerushalmi. Now since they're very similar, Ma b'mikdash yatsa kan lechulin. So if you buy a jug of wine in Yerushalmi with Maaser Sheni, it's not that you bought the jug with his money. We say no, the money is on the wine. But the jug is only secondary to the wine. The jug is chulin. Afik vulin, when you give a name on wine in a jug, nitzvas kankan lemasa. The jug becomes the Maaser Sheni, it's secondary to the wine, and it has Kedushas Maaser. Okay, now what about the other cases in our Mishnah? Zinev l'zochon stam, ad shalei gofan. We said Maaser doesn't work, but if you put a seal on it, then Maaser does work. He said until you put a seal, then nullified 1 in 100. Remember that? Once you put a seal, then there's never bottle, the whole thing is forbidden. Now, our Mishnah seems to imply you have Maaser Sheni wine, you put it in your jug. If you've not put a seal on, it's not Maaser on the jug yet. If afterwards you put a seal, that's when Maaser comes. That's what the implication is like that. And also with bittul b'tarubas, if you have wine of truma in jugs, if they got mixed up with chulin before you put a seal, they're bottle 1 in 100. If they got mixed up after you put a seal, they're not bottle. So Rav Yecha says, no, it doesn't exactly mean that. This is way to understand it. Imagine Gafan, before you put a seal, Karashem, you gave a name Maaser Sheni on the wine. Like Harav Maaser Kankan, then the jug does not become Maaser Sheni. Only the wine. Misha Gafan, once you sealed it, Karashem, you gave a name Maaser Sheni on the wine, Harav Maaser Kankan. Then Maaser requires the jug as well. So everything depends on the name that you gave Maaser Sheni on the wine. If you did it before you sealed the jug, then you don't require Maaser Sheni doesn't take over the jug, even if afterwards you seal it. But if you gave a name where it was already closed, then it requires Maaser, because then the jug is secondary to the wine, and it gets the name Maaser Sheni. And this is also the following case of the Mishnah, as far as bittul of wine and taruma, with the taruma is a chulin. Alchalai gafa and karashem, if before you put a seal, you put a name of truma on the wine, and later on you sealed it, then the jugs get nullified in 101. Because the time when you gave it a name, there was no truma on the jug, the truma doesn't become davish of minyan and is batal in 100. Mishagaf on karashem, once you put a seal, you gave it a name truma, then everything is secondary to the wine. The time you gave it a name truma is davish of minyan, it's not batal. When the Rav Yecha comes on, it also explains the following case of the Mishnah about separating truma from that which is near from you. Imagine I gafa before you put a seal, karashem, you want to give her a name truma. You take truma 1 for the 100. Mishagafan karashem, once you've put a seal, now you want to give it a name truma, then each one is separate. Then you have to take truma from each and every separate jug. Now, when are these words said that there's a difference in jugs where you seal them to jugs where you didn't seal them, from Maaser Sheni, or about bittul truma, or taking truma from that which is near you? So where do we find this difference with all these dinim? We're talking about jugs of wine, b'shel yain. Aval b'shel shemen, if it comes to oil, there's no difference. A jug is never secondary to the oil, which is Maaser Sheni. When you put a seal, you didn't put a seal. Like Harav Maaser Kankan, the jug does not become holy. Before you put the seal, when you put the seal, all batel 1 in 100. With oil, container of oil. When you didn't put a seal, when you put a seal, take truma 1 for the lot. Why? Because with wine, the barrels are important for the wine. They shouldn't ruin, it shouldn't become vinegar. They're secondary to the wine, but oil doesn't need these jugs so much. The closing is just so it shouldn't spill. Therefore, they're not secondary to the oil. Okay? He did say, this point we said earlier on about truma getting the name on the barrel, he says, we don't find it in truma on a jug that has truma inside. Even if you give a name truma on the wine when it's closed, and we don't find that the din bittul like this. The Mishnah in Arla is implying that wine of Arla, Klal Kerem, Shemachavis Stuma, let's say in a closed barrel, is not batel, even though it was also before you close the barrel. The Rambam doesn't bring the Gemara here. He seems to say there's no difference when you gave a name truma on the wine. At the time of the Taruvas, Chavis, if it's closed, it's davar chashuv, it's not batel. Okay, right. How are we doing? Right, let's carry on. Beis Shammai say, look, if you want to mix them all together, you've got to pour them back in the vat. But it still said just take the stoppers off. It's a question of Beis Shammai. What difference is if you're separating truma from 5 bags in the storehouse? You know, you got 5 sacks in the storehouse. You can't take truma one for the other. Of course you can. It's like Toman Amukav. So here as well, the jugs are open. Why can't you take truma one for the other? Why did Beis Shammai say, oh, you have to put it back in the vat? He said, Ala Rishayna Hushra. Beis Shammai is not going on the sefer of our Mishnah about taking truma that which is next to you or not. They're not discussing that. Everyone agrees if you open the jugs, you can take truma one for the rest. The machlokes is a completely different subject, which is brought in the Mishnah Rishayna, which is the earlier Mishnah in the first perek. An earlier Mishnah in the first perek, Rabbi Isaac. Something completely different. You're buying jugs of wine of chulin with Maaser Sheni money in Yerushalmi, which is on the Vavam and base. If the jugs are closed, they become chulin. If they're open, they don't become chulin. And the machlokes, what it is, if you already closed the jugs, according to Beis Shammai, even if you open it, it's still like it's closed until you put it in the vat. According to Beis Hillel, it's got a din of being open. Rabbi Bar said ala shnia. He said no. The machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is going on the Mishnah Shnia, which is our Mishnah, about truma and abuk, taking truma of that which is close to you, the way Rav Hanani understood. And the question remains: what's the difference between 5 sacks in the goyra and you can take truma one for the other? And here we say you can't. Very good question. Some learn Shnia is the second din of our Mishnah, the din bittul truma in chulin. Beis Shammai say if they were closed, it's davar chashuv, and even if you open it, it's not bottled in 101, unless you go and pour the wine in the vat. All right. Rav Shimon said, if you tell your friend, I'm selling you this barrel, apart from the jug, like a little jug's worth I'm keeping for myself, then the jug becomes chulin. If a person has wine of tevel in his chavis, and he gives it a name Maaser Sheni, and he says, Revi'is chulin yeshli b'chavis zu. You know, I'm not giving Maaser Sheni on all the wine. I'm leaving myself in this barrel a revi'is of wine of chulin, revi'is. Yatsa kankan lechulin. Then we don't say the whole chavis gets the kedusha of Maaser Sheni, because even the wine itself is not all holy. You left some for yourself. And we don't say the jug is tafel to the wine of Maaser Sheni and becomes holy, unless the whole thing is Maaser. From our Mishnah we learn this. Says, a person tells his friend, I'm selling you the whole barrel, except for this full jug full, then the jug does not get Kedushas Maaser Sheni, and the reason is the jug is not tafel to the Maaser, because since there's a bit of wine of chulin there, and the same thing if you leave for yourself a revi'is wine of chulin, then the kankan becomes chulin, as we've said in the Brisa. Adon alach, la yomar adon. Yes?